You know, and I've been playing role-playing games for the last almost decade now, and from these almost 10 years, I've been running for like 6 of them. And I think the last time I used random encounters was during the first game I ever ran. Because honestly, think about it. They're called random encounters for a reason, and honestly, they don't bring anything to the table. Do you want your players to level up so you give them a random encounter? Just have them level up. Who cares, honestly? They'll enjoy it for it. But, an advice I like to give new game masters is don't have random encounters. Just never have them. Because they don't add anything to the story. Like, if you're gonna have an encounter, a combat encounter, make it meaningful. Make it mean something. That it's not just you were walking through the park one day and suddenly kobolds. You were traveling through a valley and suddenly triceratops. You know? And those guys are not even hostile. Not usually. Like, have a reason. You can have a random encounter, like they feel like it's totally set apart from the story, but like it leads to a side quest or a side mission. That's fine. That's fine. That's little, you know, little plot hooks that you can make. But random encounters, honestly, at the end of the day, usually you have limited time to play your games, right? You're meeting once a week. Maybe you're playing for 4 hours, something like that. Don't bog down the game with a random encounter with a couple of hobgoblins that's gonna take away an hour and a half of game time. What for? So they roll a couple of dice and hit a couple of guys? Well, have that, but make it part of the story. Don't make it random highwaymen. Make them, or make them random highwaymen, and then when they beat them and they loot them, because you know their players are always gonna loot anything they kill. They find a letter by a baron or another noble that the players don't like very much, and it was a contract for these highwaymen to kill the players. Yeah, you're gonna have a plot hook. You're gonna have, you know, some intrigue. Players are gonna be interested. Why does this guy want us dead? Did we really insulted him that much, or something like that? But you know, you're walking through the town and suddenly dragon. Granted, that's a really good premise and plot hook for starting off a game. Like, why are dragons attacking us? But you just, I never found the purpose of random encounters, because honestly, I stopped using XP 7 years ago in my games. I just don't use experience points. Players just level up at certain points. More on that on another video. Talk about experience points later on. But it's just that, just, you know, if your players want to play a dungeon crawler, that's fine. They want to have random encounters, you know, like they fill up the session with random encounters if that's what everybody wants to do. That's fine. But if you're playing a story-oriented game, the random encounter takes completely away from the story. What a friend of mine does, and something I've adopted that I've started doing as well, is if the player characters are traveling for a long period of time, like we're talking about weeks or even months traveling from one place to another, you can describe that in the way they encountered a couple of bandits and they defeated them. And just handle the random encounter as part of the background story, you know? And maybe even give them a couple of gold pieces for the travel, you know? You travel from point A to point B, in the middle you encounter a couple of bandits and everybody got 9 gold pieces. Stuff like that from the random encounter. Because at least that way you're also showing them that they're really good at what they do. So they maybe have a reputation. Maybe the bandits didn't want to mess with them. Maybe they just struck a really tough blow on the bandits starting off. But you don't have to slow down the game by just putting a random encounter there. If you're in a dungeon, that's different because it's a dungeon. So it's not really random encounters, you're just gonna have creatures placed around the dungeon. But when they're traveling from one point to another point, put away the random encounter table, honestly. They don't need it. You don't need it. Trust me, trust me. Your game doesn't need the random encounter table. Just have encounters that make sense and that they add to the story. They're in a new place, they've never been here before. Have them fight something from that place that shows the different fauna or flora, there are killer plants that are in that place. I don't think that's a random encounter, that's an expositional encounter. You know? They come into a new kingdom, they get ambushed by bandits. And maybe they'll learn something about these bandits. That the bandits in this kingdom behave differently than from the other kingdoms. Or while they're fighting the bandits, knights appear. And they help the PCs handle the bandits. Stuff like that. You know? It's a random encounter, but you know, it makes sense within context. So it's not that random. Because you're using it to give information. You're using it for world building. You're not using it just to, oh, the players leveled up but they're under geared, so let me have a random encounter and the guys they're fighting have just enough gold pieces to get to how much gold they should have at this point. That's kind of lame. So yeah, you don't need random encounters, dude. You just don't. And you never will. Unless you're doing something really weird. They're in a coliseum. And, you know, you roll to see what they're going to fight. That's fine. That's fine. Because they're in a coliseum. But just rolling it. Because the whole random encounter thing, that's a very video game RPG thing. Specifically, something very JRPG. Says you're walking and suddenly, boom, monsters. You gotta fight them now. Why? What do they want? Who are they? Do we really look that tasty? Am I the guy with the very bulky, spiky armor and the really big sword that's twice my size really look enticing to these wolves? I don't know. Yes, they're animals. They're not stupid. They know when someone's dangerous. You know, they have animal instincts. So, keep that in mind. Random encounters, make away with them. If you're running a story-driven game, you don't need them. They don't add anything to the story. If you really like them and your players really like having random encounters, hey, the more power to you. I'm just here to give some advice. Until then, this is ARMR signing off and saying, remember rule number 1, always have fun.